baseball. My assumption was, as you said, the individuals play in the College World Series and go to the Major League. How many players actually go through the levels of minor leagues before they get to the majors?
That's a good question, and like they say, there's levels to it. So in general, a player gets drafted, like I said, they're eligible for being drafted straight out of high school, as long as they have a high school diploma. And or while they're playing collegiately, just like in other sports, like you know how in basketball players leave early to enter the draft. Well, technically baseball players can do the same thing. So of the universe of players that get drafted, and this is just doing a general assumption, you figure based on a current major league roster, there's 26 players on a major league roster. So let's use that number across every team in A-ball, AA, AAA. So you're looking at, let's say 26 times, I don't know, 30, whatever that number is. Now, on the major league level, you have your active roster of 26, and you have your expanded roster, which includes an additional 14 players. So when they say 40-man roster, 26 of those players are on the major league team. The other 14 are spread out primarily in AAA, but in some instances, AA. So if there's an injury, they're the most likely to get called up, but that's not always automatic. Some players lose their 40-man major league roster designation. That happened to one of the players in the Braves system, Chadwick Trump, who's a catcher, was on the 40-man roster, but he got dropped from the 40-man roster. So he's still on the AAA team, but he might not be one of the first people to immediately call up because the Braves have 3 catchers on their major league roster. That's a good question, and it's hard to say. But just like in any sport, those numbers are small. But by the same token, what people don't realize on the business end for baseball, in general, those contracts are guaranteed. So unless you're a non-roster invitee, in general, any player on the minor level or major level, they're getting guaranteed money in general. Whereas for the NFL, the only money is guaranteed is a signing bonus because you get cut for any reason. That's why they call it not for long for the NFL. And then for other sports, while they're kind of moving more towards a baseball model, in general, baseball contracts are probably still going to be the most solid. And even if you get bought out, basically, like, let's say if you're owed $10 million on a contract, teams don't want to pay you, but it's like, we'll buy you out for $5. So now that player basically gets severance pay for $5, but they're a free agent, so now they can re-sign with another team and technically kind of make that money back. So it's a good question. Those numbers are probably, I'd have to do more research, but they're probably small, just like any other professional sport. So the fact, like I said, even if they don't make the major leagues, the fact they got drafted, every college player doesn't get drafted, every high school player doesn't get drafted. Even with you getting drafted, there's no guarantee you're gonna get promoted up the ranks. They release players, cut players, players never get to the big leagues and end up retiring, but maybe they go in on the coaching level or what have you. So it's a couple of really nebulous moving parts.
But you can just hear the significance of the minor league in terms of how you were talking about those individuals. And I think it is that we dismiss as one that's well outside of baseball. You know, I know Jeter, I know this, I know that, but that's it. So their stories are the way that you articulate is quite compelling.
And what's interesting is when you mentioned Derek Jeter, he played his minor league ball in Greensboro. A lot of people don't realize that. He played his minor, when Greensboro used to be affiliated with the Yankees, I think they're the Greensboro Bats. He played his minor league ball in Greensboro. And then he got promoted up to Columbus, which at the time was Yankees AAA team. But yeah, a lot of people don't realize you had Hall of Fame players get their start right here in Greensboro or Winston or Asheville down the road. Like I said, there's a lot of history right here. Yes.
So, I don't want to say people do it wrong, but what makes your interviewing style different than others?
Oh gosh, what makes it different? Because I'm me. No, I'll be honest. On the journey, I'll tell you who, you're gonna laugh at this, but there's 2 people growing up that I watched whose interview style is highly influenced by. One was Ed Bradley from 60 Minutes. And Stacy, you may or may not remember this. He actually visited our elementary school. back in the day when I was in 6th grade, he actually visited our elementary schools. Ed Bradley, the late Ed Bradley, who was one of the anchors for 60 Minutes. And I'll tell you who else, Dick Cavett from the Dick Cavett Show. And I'll tell you why I liked him. If you listen to him, he was very deliberate in regards to his speech, so it'd be easy for the person to hear. And I know for somebody who every once in a while would fly off at the mouth and go from like slow tempo to like go speed racer go, listening to those two helped me in regards to watching my tempo, watching my tone, and making it more conversational. And I think a lot of times, like, people who interview folks are like so heavy-handed. It's like, you don't have to be heavy-handed to prove your point. To me, if you make it more conversational, people are going to be relaxed. If people are relaxed, they're going to open up. And if they feel comfortable in opening up to you, you're going to get info that other people can't. And I can say that through the lens of like covering the players, student athletes here at Wake is great when I can have a sit down with a Jasir Taylor who went to middle school in the same area where I went to middle school, who's now in the league. It's great on the baseball end to have interviewed, like last year, Vaughn Grissom, who's probably going to be Boston's starting second baseman or shortstop, and people said all this negative things about him. Oh, he is this and that. He was one of the nicest people to interview. So, like I said, I think for me, it's like, I know I'm most comfortable when I feel like I can have a conversation with someone, so let me use that as a starting point. And like I was saying earlier, if I'm talking with you instead of at you, I'm gonna get more out of you than anyone else can. And you're talking with somebody who, from covering Wake's football team, so I'm on the media list for different members of Congress. I had a one-on-one with a member of Congress. I'm not on ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, but I'm at the table. So either I'm doing something right, or shouts to my barber, shouts to mom and dad for raising me right, all of you keeping me on pins and needles. So that's why, it's something. It's something.